crowd fell silent as I stepped into the ballroom. Every head turned. The bride spun around and my blood turned to ice in my veins. It was my mother, Victoria Estavo, wearing the exact gown I had chosen months ago. She stood there holding hands with my fiancé, Kane Parker. Gasps rippled through the room like waves crashing against rocks. Someone whispered behind a champagne glass, "Isn't that Georgina?" I didn't blink. I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were made of cement. My name is Georgina Estavo. I love people calling me Gina, and I wasn't invited to my own wedding. Their smiles didn't fade when they saw me standing there. They didn't look guilty or ashamed. But mine was just beginning to form, a quiet, dangerous smile that came from somewhere deep inside. A smile that promised this story wasn't over. Not even close. I turned and walked out, my heels clicking against marble floors. Behind me, confused whispers grew louder, but I didn't look back. Looking back was for people who had something left to lose. Before betrayal, there was adoration. My mother Victoria wasn't just my mother. She was my mirror, my measure, my biggest mistake. People adored her everywhere she went. Men adored her even more, falling over themselves to open doors and light her cigarettes. And I spent my entire life trying to be enough, trying to earn even half the attention she got without effort. She used to say to me when I was younger, "The world doesn't love two stars in one family, darling." I thought she was joking, the way mothers do when they're trying to teach you about competition. Until I learned she meant every single word. She believed it down to her bones. There could only be one queen, and she had claimed that throne long before I was born. I was supposed to be her shadow, her audience, her supporting character. Growing up, I watched men orbit around her like planets around the sun. She collected their attention the way other people collect stamps or coins. And I told myself it didn't matter because she was my mother, and I loved her. Kane Parker was charming and ambitious, all wrapped up in an expensive tailored suit. We met at a charity gala 2 years ago on a warm September evening. He spilled champagne on my dress, and instead of getting angry, I laughed. Most women would have screamed or stormed off, but something about his embarrassed face made me laugh until tears rolled down my cheeks. He said later, after we'd been dating for months, "That laugh is the reason I fell in love with you, Gina." I believed him with my whole heart. I believed everything he said because his words felt like poetry. When I finally introduced him to my mother at Sunday brunch, she smiled too long. Her eyes lingered on his face, his hands, his shoulders. "You finally found someone worthy of you, Georgina," she said, her voice smooth as silk. But her eyes told a different story. They were already studying him like a jeweler studies a diamond, checking for value, for worth, for something she could claim as her own. Kane became part of our family dinners every single week. He'd bring flowers, always stopping to give them to her first before handing me mine. "Just my favorite lilies," he'd say with that charming smile that made everyone melt. I thought it was sweet, thoughtful even. I didn't realize I was feeding the snake that would eventually bite me. I was handing him over on a silver platter without even knowing it. Victoria began dressing younger, wearing clothes that belonged in my closet instead of hers. She laughed louder at his jokes, touching his arm when she talked. Once I came home early and caught her wearing his jacket in the living room. "Oh, he forgot it last night," she said too quickly, her voice just a bit too high. Something cold settled in my stomach that night like a stone dropping into dark water. I couldn't name it yet, but I felt it. The shift. The danger. The betrayal is growing roots in my own home. Kane's phone buzzed while he was in the shower one Thursday evening. I glanced at the screen just once, not meaning to invade his privacy. But what I saw destroyed me. "Don't worry, my love. She'll understand one day. We belong together." The message was from Victoria Estavo, followed by a red heart emoji. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. My vision blurred as I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding. I felt my world implode in complete silence, like a building collapsing inward with no sound at all. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, water dripping from his hair, I just asked in the calmest voice I could manage, "When were you planning to tell me?" He froze completely. His face went white as paper. His mouth opened, but no words came out. And in that terrible silence, I knew my life was about to split in two. I went to Victoria's house that same night, driving through empty streets with tears streaming down my face. When I arrived, she didn't deny anything. She didn't even look guilty or ashamed. She stood in her silk robe, wine glass in hand, looking at me like I was overreacting. "Kane and I connect in ways you can't understand, Georgina. We share something deeper. Maybe one day you'll even thank me for this." Her voice was casual, like she was discussing the weather or a new recipe. I wanted to scream until my throat bled. I wanted to throw something, break something, hurt her the way she'd hurt me. But she just smiled, that same beautiful smile I'd loved my entire life, and sipped her wine calmly. That smile, the one I once called beautiful, now felt venomous, poisonous, deadly. That was the night my love for her turned to steel, cold, hard, unbreakable. I walked out without another word because words were useless now. Kane stopped answering my calls the next day. Every call went straight to voicemail. My texts turned blue and stayed unread for hours, then days. He'd completely ghosted me like I'd never existed. Then one morning, exactly 2 weeks later, a gold envelope arrived at my apartment. My hands trembled as I tore it open, my heart pounding in my chest. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Victoria Estavo and Kane Parker." No apology, no explanation. Just glittering cruelty printed on expensive paper. They were getting married in 3 weeks at the venue I had already booked and paid for, the same venue where I was supposed to marry him. I stared at my reflection in the mirror for a long time, my face pale and hollow. Then I whispered to myself, "You think I'll just sit here and watch you win? You don't know me at all." Something inside me changed that morning, something fundamental and permanent. I went to the wedding. I know I shouldn't have, but I did anyway. I had to see it with my own eyes and had to confirm it was real. The same hall I'd booked and decorated in my mind 1,000 times. The same white roses I'd chosen from the florist downtown. The same classical song I'd picked for my first dance as a married woman. And there she stood, radiant in my stolen dreams, smug and triumphant. Victoria looked like a queen, glowing under the chandelier lights. Kane looked restless beside her, his eyes darting around the room, carefully avoiding mine. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," and she kissed him, I felt my stomach twist violently. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I turned slowly and walked away, my heels clicking on marble floors. Not because I was weak or broken, because I was already planning something they couldn't imagine. Revenge takes patience, and I had plenty of time. The next day, I vanished completely. New city, new apartment, new job, new name. I started calling myself just Gina instead of Georgina Estavo. Simple, anonymous, forgettable. The kind of woman no one looks at twice on the subway or in coffee shops. I deleted my social media accounts, changed my phone number, cut ties with everyone who knew my old life. But beneath that calm, quiet exterior, I was sharpening myself like a blade. I took design classes at night, worked brutal hours, studied everything I could about architecture and urban planning. Pain became my teacher, and it was the most disciplined teacher I'd ever had. Every night I went to bed exhausted but stronger. Every morning I woke up with more purpose. I wasn't running away anymore. I was preparing, building, becoming someone they wouldn't recognize, someone they couldn't hurt ever again. The old Georgina died that day, and someone new was born. He walked into the small design firm on a cold Tuesday afternoon. Graham Sterling, the CEO of one of the biggest architectural companies in the entire country. Everyone in the office froze when he entered, but I kept working on my sketches. He stopped at my desk, looked down at my designs, and studied them for a long, silent minute. Then he said in a deep, thoughtful voice, "You design like someone who's lived through fire." I looked up at him, meeting his eyes for the first time. "Fire leaves the strongest steel," I replied quietly. Something flickered in his expression, respect maybe, or curiosity. He asked me to join his firm as a junior designer and said he saw potential in my work that others had missed. I said yes without hesitation. Working for Graham Sterling would change everything, though I didn't know how much yet. I didn't realize Kane Parker worked for the same company until weeks later when his name appeared on an internal memo. Working for Graham felt like entering another world entirely. He was powerful but kind, nothing like Kane's flashy charm. Graham valued silence, precision, and vision above everything else. He didn't need to be the loudest person in the room because his work spoke for itself. And somehow, through all the meetings and late nights, he saw me. Not as decoration or competition, but as someone with talent worth developing. Slowly, month by month, I rose through the ranks at Sterling Architecture. I won a major design competition. My projects got featured in magazines. People started using my name with respect instead of pity. I didn't realize Kane worked in the same building until 6 months in, when his name appeared on a project memo. He was in corporate development, 3 floors below mine. For the first time in years, I smiled for real. A genuine smile that reached my eyes, because fate had just handed me the perfect stage for what came next. He saw me in the corridor one afternoon, carrying blueprints to a client meeting. His face went completely pale, like he'd seen a ghost. "Gee, Georgina," his voice cracked when he said my name. I stopped, turned slowly, and looked at him with cold, empty eyes. "It's Mrs. Stavo," I said coolly, my voice sharp as glass. Then I walked past him without another word, my heels clicking confidently. He stood there frozen, watching me disappear around the corner. I could feel his eyes on my back, feel the regret radiating off him like heat. But regret isn't love. It's just nostalgia for the control you've lost. It's wanting someone back because your ego can't handle that they moved on. I didn't want his regret. I didn't want his apologies. I wanted him to watch me rise while he stayed exactly where he was, stuck in the mediocre life he'd chosen with my mother. By lunch that same day, the whispers started spreading through the office like wildfire. "The boss has a crush on her. She's the one Kane Parker left years ago. I heard she's basically running the design department now." I ignored every single whisper, kept my head down, and my work was excellent. But every time Graham defended me in meetings or praised my ideas in front of clients, I noticed Kane's jaw tighten. His hands would clench into fists under the conference table. His eyes would narrow with barely hidden anger. Victoria's little empire was cracking from the inside, and she didn't even know it yet. The power dynamic had shifted completely. I wasn't the broken girl crying over stolen love anymore. I was becoming someone they'd both underestimated, someone dangerous, someone who knew exactly how to play the long game. And the best part, I hadn't even started real revenge yet. It was late one Thursday evening, city lights glowing through the office glass like scattered stars. Most people had gone home hours ago, but Graham and I were finishing a presentation in the morning. He placed a small velvet box on the table between us. My heart stopped. "I've built a lot of things in my life, Georgina," he said quietly. "Skyscrapers, bridges, entire neighborhoods, but nothing I've ever built felt right until you walked into my world." Tears blurred my vision as he opened the box, revealing a simple but stunning diamond ring. When he slipped it onto my finger, his hands were steady, but his voice shook slightly. "You're sure?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. "Completely," he said, smiling that rare, genuine smile he only showed when we were alone. He kissed me softly, and I knew in that moment that fate had finally returned the pen to my hand. I was writing my own story now, and it was going to be beautiful. Week after our engagement, Graham handed me a gold-embossed envelope during breakfast. "Corporate gala, attendance required," he said casually, pouring coffee. I opened it and froze completely. The venue name burned into my eyes like fire. The Estavo Grand Hall, my mother's latest charity project, the one she'd been posting about constantly on social media. And Kane Parker was listed as her co-host for the evening. My hands started shaking, and the room suddenly felt too small. "You okay?" Graham asked, concerned about crossing his face. "Perfect," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. My smile came slowly and certain, like sunrise breaking over mountains. This was it. The moment I'd been unconsciously preparing for. The moment where everything would come full circle. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't that broken girl they destroyed. I was ready to walk back into their world and show them exactly who I'd become. And I was going to do it on the arm of the man who owned Kane's entire career. I spent the next few days preparing, not for them, but for myself. The dress I chose wasn't loud or desperate for attention. It was power disguised as elegance, a deep emerald silk that moved like water. The jewelry was subtle, but every piece gleamed with quiet intent. Small diamond earrings, a delicate bracelet Graham had given me. My engagement ring catches light with every movement. I practiced my smile in the mirror, the one that said I was unbothered, untouchable, completely healed. For years, I'd been the broken one, the victim in their story, the girl who got left behind. Now I was something different. I was calm before the reckoning. I was the storm they never saw coming. The night before the gala, I barely slept. Not from nervousness, but from anticipation. Tomorrow, I would walk into that ballroom and reclaim every piece of dignity they'd tried to steal. And they would finally understand what they'd lost. The night of the gala arrived cold and clear. I arrived on Graham's arm, stepping out of his car in front of the Estavo Grand Hall. Camera flashes went off like fireworks. When I stepped into that ballroom, time seemed to fold in half. the same crystal chandeliers, the same marble floors, the same classical music floating through expensive air. But this time, everything was different. This time, they stared in admiration instead of pity. "Is that Georgina Estavo?" someone whispered near the bar. "With Graham Sterling, Graham Sterling." Heads turned like dominoes falling, and there they stood frozen near the champagne fountain, Victoria in a red dress that tried too hard, Kane in a suit that looked cheap next to Graham's. Their faces went pale as ghosts. Victoria's champagne glass trembled in her hand. Kane's mouth fell open slightly. For the first time in years, they looked small, powerless, afraid, and I smiled at them, calm and devastating, as Graham led me deeper into the room. Graham raised his glass halfway through the evening. The entire ballroom went quiet, hundreds of eyes turning toward the stage. "Tonight," he began, his voice carrying authority that silenced even the waiters, "I want to honor someone very special. The woman who turned ruins into rebirth, who taught me that strength isn't about never falling, it's about rising every single time. My fiancé, Georgina Estavo. I love calling her Gina." Gasps filled the room like oxygen being sucked out. Kane's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. Victoria's fingers tightened around her champagne glass until I heard it crack, champagne spilling onto her dress. The same hall that once watched me crumble in humiliation now exploded in applause for my triumph. People stood, clapping, smiling at me with respect. Graham kissed my hand, and cameras flashed everywhere. I didn't look at Kane or Victoria. I didn't need to. Their shock was loud enough without seeing their faces. After Graham's speech, Kane tried to corner me near the exit. His face was desperate, sweaty, pathetic. "Georgina, please, can we just talk for 1 minute?" His voice cracked with barely contained panic. I stopped, turned slowly, and looked at him like he was a stranger asking for directions. "It's Miss Sterling now," I corrected softly, my voice cold as winter. "And no, we can't talk. We have nothing to say." Victoria appeared behind him, her eyes darting between us like a trapped animal. Fury flickered beneath her carefully maintained calm. Her makeup was smudged slightly, her dress stained with champagne. She looked older suddenly, tired, like someone who'd been running too long and finally realized they were lost. Power had finally changed hands, and everyone in that room could feel it. The whispers grew louder. People were already choosing sides, and I had clearly won. I walked away from them both without looking back, Graham's hand warm and steady on my waist. Victoria cornered me near the exit doors when Graham stepped away to talk with investors. Her voice was low and sharp, vibrating with barely controlled rage. "You planned this whole thing, didn't you? This entire performance?" I turned to face her calmly, my expression unreadable. "No, Mother," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You did, the moment you taught me what love isn't, the moment you chose him over me. You planned my destruction, and I simply survived it." Her face went pale, her hands trembling at her sides. "You'll never outshine me, Georgina, never." I leaned closer, close enough that only she could hear my next words. "Then stop standing in my shadow," I whispered. Then I walked away, leaving her standing there alone while people stared and whispered. I didn't look back. Looking back was for people who still cared. And I was finally completely free of caring what she thought. The rumors spread fast after that night, faster than fire through dry grass. Investors started questioning Kane's ethics publicly. How could they trust a man who'd betrayed his fiancée with her own mother? His position at the company became unstable, then impossible. Within 2 months, he was demoted, then quietly pushed out. Victoria's social media followers turned on her overnight. Comments that once praised her beauty now called her shameless, cruel, disgusting. Her charity events stopped getting sponsors. Her friends stopped returning calls. Their empire of image and superficial perfection began to rot from the inside out, and I didn't lift a single finger to make it happen. I didn't spread rumors or hire investigators. Their own choices destroyed them. All I did was live well, work hard, and let the truth speak for itself. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming successful while your enemies destroy themselves. When Graham and I finally married 6 months later, it was small and intimate. No huge ballroom, no hundreds of guests, no cameras or press releases, just 20 people who actually loved us, standing on a beach at sunset. We exchanged vows while waves crashed softly against sand. I wore a simple white dress that cost less than my shoes at the gala. Graham wore a linen suit and smiled like I was the only person in the world. "I promise to build a life with you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not a performance, but something real." I cried, but they were good tears this time, healing tears, We didn't need witnesses or validation, just peace. And peace felt like the most powerful thing I'd ever experienced. No revenge, no anger, no bitterness. Just two people choosing each other honestly. But destiny wasn't quite finished with its curtain calls. One more scene remained. Months later, Graham's company hosted a massive celebration gala for our newest development project. Every executive in the industry had to attend, including Kane, who was now working for a much smaller firm. My name was on every banner hanging from the ceiling. My designs decorated every wall, blown up huge and beautiful. Awards I'd won sat in glass cases near the entrance. And when Graham introduced me, he said with pride ringing in his voice, "Mrs. Georgina Sterling, Executive Creative Director." The applause was deafening. Victoria came to the event. I saw her enter near the back. She was dressed in pride and regret, her face carefully made up but her eyes hollow. Kane followed her like a shadow, uncomfortable in a cheap suit. They looked small and out of place among all the success and celebration. I didn't approach them. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. My life, my work, my happiness spoke louder than any words could. Midway through the event, the lights dimmed for a tribute video. My career story played across massive screens, photographs of my early sketches, projects I'd completed, awards I'd won, magazine covers featuring my work. My voice narrated parts of it, talking about failure and resilience, and then one final line appeared on the screen in elegant white letters, "Dedicated to those who broke me. In a way, you built this too." The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Kane looked absolutely shattered, his face crumbling. Victoria couldn't meet my eyes, staring at her hands instead. People shifted uncomfortably, realizing they just witnessed something profound and painful. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat or make a speech. I didn't need to do anything at all. The truth had spoken for itself, clear and undeniable. Sometimes the quietest revenge is the loudest. Weeks after that final gala, Kane resigned from his job completely. I heard through mutual contacts that he'd moved to another state, trying to start over somewhere nobody knew his story. Victoria left town quietly soon after, her reputation in complete ruins. Her social media accounts went silent. Her charity work disappeared. She became invisible, which for someone like her was the cruelest punishment possible. I visited my father's grave one cold Sunday morning. He was the only person who'd loved me without envy or conditions, who'd died before seeing what his wife became. "It's over, Dad," I whispered, kneeling by his headstone. "I'm finally free." As the wind moved through the bare trees, I smiled faintly, because I'd learned something important through all of this. Revenge isn't fury or hatred. Revenge isn't destroying someone else. Real revenge is peace after chaos. It's healing after being hurt. It's building something beautiful from broken pieces. You can steal a man, a ring, even a moment, but you can never steal someone's destiny. And that realization was my revenge. Not theirs to give, only mine to claim.